Winning the lottery is the dream of many people who are stuck in the day-to-day rat race of life. The man in this story is no different. George Turkelbaum is a proofreader at Townes Fabian, publisher of medical textbooks in Toronto, Canada. He is regarded as a hard worker by his boss. Meet Elliot Wakiski.
Well, George Turkelbaum was a real credit to the company, to Townes Fabian. He read more manuscripts than anybody in his department, before or since.
George was dedicated to his job because that's all he had.
Well, he didn't have much of a social life outside of work. I mean, he wasn't married, and I guess that was all he had to do.
But George dreamed of having more, much more. George would leave his job in a second if his numbers came up. For George's dream was winning the lottery, and on July 15, 2006, it appeared as if his time might have come.
George?
He calls the automated lottery number line as he has done each and every Wednesday to check his ticket.
Hey, George. Hey.
The first three numbers match his, and at that point, George realizes he may be a multi-million-dollar winner. It was, however, all a little too much for George's heart to handle. As the numbers roll out, he suffers a sudden and massive coronary.
For further options,
meet Dr. Ian Calder. He knows all about sudden death syndrome.
Well, basically, the coronary arteries get blocked. There's pressure on a nerve called the vagus nerve, and that causes sudden unexpected death, which is called vasovagal shock sometimes.
Not only has George just died, but he stays in the same position, holding the phone with the lottery numbers now repeating into his deaf ear. This is where the story becomes truly extraordinary. The day wears on, and no one notices George is dead at his desk.
Go home, George.
Not even at quitting time.
Hey, drinks tonight. Come on, let's do it.
sounds good. Let's go. Bye, George.
George, see ya.
The next day, George is at his desk working away. At least, that's what his co-workers think.
I'm gonna need these by Thursday. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Morning, George.
Check.
No one knows George is not himself, even by the third day.
Hey, George, I got things piling up. You might want to proofread this for me. Thanks, buddy.
Well, I never checked in on George too often. I didn't have to. I didn't notice that manuscripts were stacking up in his in tray, 3, 4, 5. I mean, if I had noticed, I wouldn't have said anything, because I mean, he would have caught up.
George's work ethic keeps the boss off his back, and the cleaners figure George is just working late.
Hey, George.
I didn't want to get close. I never actually cleaned his cubicle.
George continues to decompose at his desk, and his colleagues don't suspect anything, not even the smell.
Yes, if you're in an air-conditioned environment, well, of course, it may be cooler than the normal room, and therefore the body may not decompose as rapidly.
It's not known how long George could have stayed fresh, but thanks to a fire alarm, George's secret is soon discovered.
Come on, George. Let's go.
Yeah, we had another fire alarm, aka smoke buddy.
Hey, George, you know about the fire drills, eh, buddy? Hey, George. Whoa. Hey, buddy.
What's going on?
He's cold.
George? Hey, did you check his pulse?
George is dead.
Somebody call 911.
But what about that lottery ticket, locked between George's fingers?
Well, just out of interest, I listened in on the handset to the last call he made, because he died. He had that phone stuck in his hand still. And it was an automated lottery line. It just kept repeating the lottery numbers.
5,
George.
21,
21,
22,
27.
27.
I think he won like a little bit, $50.
Oh, George.
He's not a winner.
George only had 3 out of the 6 numbers required to score the multi-million-dollar jackpot.
Now that you mention it, I guess it kind of is sad. So, of course, you know, it's unfortunate what happened.
Did George come close to winning the lottery, die, and then remain unnoticed at his desk for almost a week? Did it happen? Let's start with the would-be lottery winner who dies at his desk and no one notices. The story is false. It was published as fact in a news story by British newspapers The Times and The Guardian in December 2000. Even though the story was said to have originated in New York, no U.S. papers ran the story. A search found no obituaries for a man named Turkelbaum, and police had no reports of his death. The tabloid press story was a hoax. It does occasionally surface, and the number of days the worker is not discovered has increased to as many as 30. The smell would be very overpowering. Pelanomi Hospital, Bloemfontein, South Africa, 1996. Something strange is going on in the intensive care unit. And at the center of this deadly mystery is a hospital bed. Meet bed number 3. It's said that once you get in it, you won't get up. One person is a witness to the strange deaths that occur in the hospital's ICU. Meet Nurse Penny Walden.
Every Thursday was my day off, and on Fridays, when I came back in, the patient in bed 3 had passed away.
In Nurse Walden's first 4 weeks on the job, 4 patients die in bed 3. But her 5th patient in as many weeks seems to be well on a road to recovery.
Mr. Kroon was responding very well to treatment, so I thought he's going to, be fine, not a problem.
But on Thursday, Penny's day off, he suddenly dies. A pattern is developing. Every Thursday for the past 5 weeks, a patient dies in the ICU, and every one of them has been in bed 3. Penny takes her observations to the hospital administrator. Meet Mark Garner.
I must admit, I was initially a little wary, but it was pretty amazing to see this pattern.
And not only that, between 8:15 and 8:45 in the morning. Now, I am sorry, no one could convince me that that was just a coincidence.
Could someone or something be killing patients? An investigation is launched. At the same time, rumors begin to spread around the hospital.
People started to call bed 3 the deathbed, saying it was cursed as well. All kinds of crazy talk.
For the same fatal half hour every Thursday, the hospital posts a guard at bed 3. It becomes known as the Vigil.
It just stopped. No one died on Thursdays in bed 3 anymore. But then, of course, we decided, well, there's no need for the vigil anymore. The vigil stops, and that's it. Next week, another death. Bam.
But then Penny switches shifts with a colleague. And on Thursday, July 2nd, 1996 at 8:22 a.m., it all becomes clear.
I could not believe it.
Agnes, the cleaner, polishes the floor in the ICU. And the cord can't reach from the wall to bed 3.
So what she had to do was use the plug right by the bed. And what was plugged into that plug right by the bed was a life support system.
Whenever Agnes unplugged the life support system and plugged in her floor polisher, another patient would end up dying. But how could she not notice the deaths week after week?
Well, when it's unplugged and she's plugged in a polisher, it obviously makes a lot of noise. And she can't hear then the patient actually convulsing on the bed. Also, she had a personal stereo.
But what about the times when guards were posted at bed 3? Agnes didn't want to disturb them on those occasions, so she didn't clean the room. The investigation concludes. The deaths are ruled accidental, and the hospital begins to settle each case. Cleaner Agnes is let go. Mark Garner is held accountable for the accidental deaths and is fired by the hospital's board. Nurse Penny Walden, however, continues to help save lives.
Well, I mean, that's what this job is all about.
So the curse of the deathbed turns out to be a cleaner's mistake. But did it happen? Was it true? The story of the cursed bed was actually reported in 1996 by newspapers all over South Africa. But no one bothered to check the facts surrounding the multiple death rumors at the actual Palanomi hospital. The story is false. Urban legends often center on hapless culprits, as in this case, a floor cleaner who unplugged life support systems. It's possible to unplug the machine causing a patient to die, but it's a lot more difficult than we've shown. The systems have alarms, and many have backup battery power in case of emergency. First up, die another day. Avoiding a bad situation is usually attributed to good luck or being in the right place at the right time. But having the good fortune to narrowly avoid a catastrophe, well, the people in this story know exactly how that feels. Falls, Iowa, 1950. Fate, good fortune, or just plain luck is about to save a group of people from a major catastrophe and certain death. They will be left shaken, but alive. Meet Gail Burnham. Her father was the minister of the town's Baptist church, and every Wednesday night, he was at the church for choir practice.
Daddy always went down to the church on the night of choir practice to warm it up because it got really cold.
Reverend Burnham would then return home for dinner with his family. Then they would all go back to church for the choir meeting that always began promptly at 7:20. This particular Wednesday evening is no different, except for something that occurs at the dinner table.
I spilled ice cream on my dress, and my mother had to iron a new dress for me and put the old one in the wash.
This little accident means the family will be late for choir practice. Reverend Burnham isn't happy.
He's so upset that we're late.
It was now 7:29. The family is almost 10 minutes late, but they would soon learn that the setback is also their saving grace.
And we're getting to the church, and all of a sudden, there's this loud boom.
The West Side Baptist Church explodes, and what's left of the structure is engulfed. Earlier that evening, Reverend Burnham turned on the furnace to warm the church, and he lit some candles. But he didn't notice the smell of gas leaking from the heating system. The church was a holy tinderbox, ready to blow to high heaven. Shock immediately turns to despair when they realize the choir was probably somewhere in the church, waiting for the minister's arrival when the explosion occurred. If so, no one could have survived. Meet Judith and Ruth Reinholds, sisters. As girls in 1950, they looked forward to their weekly choir get-togethers. They were never late.
We were all set to go to choir practice. We went out to the car, and my goodness, it wouldn't start. Stone cold dead. The engine wouldn't turn over at all.
They too arrived late at the place where the church once stood.
And there I saw the church, which should have been standing nice and tall, a pile of rubble on the ground.
The sisters are not the only lucky ones. Meet Wanda Fisher. In 1950, she was a teen who loved to sing and who was never late for choir practice.
That particular night, I was having trouble with a geometry problem, and I couldn't get it to work out.
A tough math problem saves her life, but she immediately thinks the worst.
I thought first of my friends in the choir, and I thought, oh, they must all be dead.
But the West Side Baptist Church choir is very much alive. Incredibly, a fiery fate has missed each one of its members. Jerry Littell stubbed his toe on a curb and had to hobble the rest of the way. Judy Lewis fell asleep after taking the wrong medication after dinner. Gerald Wise is delayed by a door-to-door salesman. Peggy Belleville misplaced a shoe.
One by one, everybody came. Nobody was in the church. We would have all perished in that blast. We would have all died.
Divine intervention, an incredible stroke of luck, or just a myth? Did this actually happen? We'll tell you at the end of the show. If you thought the story of the lucky choir saved from certain death was true, well, you'd be wrong. While there is no West Side Baptist Church in Falls, Iowa, nor is there a Falls, Iowa, there is one in Beatrice, Nebraska, or was one. It really did explode on March 1st, 1950. However, it was no wonder that the real choir lived. It has become a bit of a running joke with them, as no one ever turned up for choir practice on time that night, or any other. Like all good urban legends, this one has a kernel of truth, but the story gets warped during the telling over time. The story begins in the United States in 2006, when one young woman develops an interest in genealogy. Meet Jessica Desmond.
Well, because my great-grandfather moved from Britain to the States, I've always been interested in where I came from and who my family were. So I decided to ask my relatives and find out, and that's when I found out about this story that had happened.
Jessica's research unearthed a terrible family secret dating back to England during World War II, a time when almost everything was rationed. Food was scarce. Supply ships were constantly under attack, according to this historian. Meet Robert Opie.
The main shipping route was coming over from America, both Canada and the USA. And Hitler was clearly doing everything he could to stop that transport. During the whole of the war, he did manage to sink 2,500 merchant ships, which had a huge effect on our survival. So it was essential to have a rationing system, because we knew that unless we had equal supplies for everybody, people would actually literally starve.
Sugar, milk, meat, butter, eggs, fruit, virtually everything was in short supply. Jessica's great-grandfather Bill, who was living in the U.S., began sending food parcels to his sister Anne and her two children, Kitty and Ronald, in London.
Some people were fortunate to have relatives overseas. Not many people did. And they were fortunate because, of course, the Americans or the Canadians or wherever they were would send food parcels over from time to time. It was a great treat, you know, because you had all kinds of delights.
He would send, like, if there was a new cereal or chocolate bar or comics, and he'd send over, like, custard powder. And they always used to get really excited about it, apparently.
To the kids Ron and Kitty, it was the biggest treat of all.
So it was a fun experience and an exciting time. It was like Christmas, I suppose, a food parcel arriving with some wonderful things.
Uncle Bill would send packages every 30 days without fail. But in July of 1942, the parcels suddenly stopped. The Desmonds assume the ship carrying their package has been torpedoed.
I suppose quite often they didn't get those food parcels because the ship was sunk.
But then, in September, a package arrives at their home. It is full of usual goodies, including what Ronald and Kitty want the most, custard.
When it arrived, that tea time, they boiled a bowl of hot water and mixed in the powder and gave the kids like a bowl each.
As their mother is mixing it, she notices it looks unusual. But the children don't care. They've been looking forward to this for weeks. The children take a mouthful, but it tastes as bad as it looks. Anne throws the rest away, assuming it has gone bad. But the truth is stomach churning.
It's another box from Uncle Bill.
A couple of days later, another package arrives along with a letter, which contains some bad news.
The letter said, Bill has died of a heart attack.
The news of her brother's death is a shock, but the rest of the news is even more shocking.
Grandma said that his heart always belonged in England, and when he died, he wanted to be buried in British soil. In the box with the greaseproof paper, it was not the custard powder. It was his ashes.
Bill had returned to his beloved England, but not how he had intended. Anne had unknowingly fed her children Uncle Bill's cremated corpse. The rest of his remains were thrown out in the garbage.
Well, I mean, can you imagine eating your great-grandpa? That's just eating your own family.
The children never ate custard again. A gruesome wartime tale, but are we rationing the truth? Did it happen? And Uncle Custard. Was the story of the uncle's remains mixed up as custard and fed to the children true? It was false. In other versions of the story, Uncle Bill is mistaken for flour, powdered soup, or spices. And the explanatory letter always gets delayed or is in a foreign language. But what doesn't change is the part where the family eats some of it before the gruesome discovery. Either way, the story is a hoax. Every day, thousands of construction workers injure themselves in this, one of the most dangerous of professions. Just a minor slip on a job site, and a worker could find himself in deep trouble. Of course, some machines are more dangerous than others. Meet the Ingersoll Rand, a 4-ton steamroller. It has only one job, to squash things flat. This is the story of how, against all odds, a mere man was able to take on the full force of the steamroller and survive. Meet Andrew Jepson, from Wolverhampton, England, a construction worker who builds parking lots.
I used to set out line levels for the car park there that we were building.
Heathrow Airport, London, January 20th, 1998. It was a normal workday for Andrew Jepson, except that it was busier than usual, and Andrew found himself distracted by all the commotion.
It was a fairly busy site, yeah, when I was there. There was a lot of work going on in different sections, a lot of machinery, quite a noisy site with the constant stream of jumbo jets coming in one after another.
With all the noise around him, Andrew was unaware of a steamroller working behind him. He'd been sick, and this was his first day back at work.
And my head was like spinning a bit.
Andrew was giving instructions to one of his crew, oblivious to the steamroller that was now heading toward him. Making matters even worse, the driver's jacket was jamming the controls. He was powerless to stop the machine.
And he said he got his coat stuck on the lever. Next thing I know, I looked down at my foot and saw that the roller was on my foot.
Andrew Jepson was helpless as his entire body was pulled down underneath the 4-ton roller. It took less than 15 seconds for the machine to roll the length of Jepson's body, inch by excruciating inch. To give us an idea of the pressure involved, we asked our science expert, Dr. John Kilcoyne, to demonstrate using a steamroller on 150 pounds of chicken, exactly Andrew's weight.
This is a 4-ton roller, but it has a device which increases its mass to 11 tons. Based upon that, it would exert a pressure of around 20 times normal atmospheric pressure. That would squash the human body. That's the kind of pressure that would be on him. Well, if we assume the roller started at his feet, as it went up his legs, the fluid parts of his body would behave rather like a tube of toothpaste, with the toothpaste moving in front of the roller, and all his internal organs, his liver and kidneys, would probably burst open.
And yet, despite enduring that incredible force, miraculously, Andrew's body began to move.
After it left me, I immediately got up to my feet and started cursing and swearing at the roller driver. He jumped off the back of the roller and got me down on the ground, put me in the recovery position.
Andrew didn't realize it, but his lungs had been punctured.
I had several broken ribs and severe bruising around my groin region, and looked like I had a pair of black pants on.
But how could Andrew possibly have survived something like this? You would think the only logical explanation would be that the ground was soft and he was simply squeezed into it as the steamroller pressed over him.
No, it was compacted hardcore. There was no giving it whatsoever.
In other words, a gravel base that had just been laid for the new parking lot and would appear to have very little give. And still, he survived. After a couple of days in the hospital, Andrew was back on his own 2 feet and back at work.
Yeah, surprised looking back at it now, but at the time it was just something. I felt like I had to fight the roller as it was going over me.
Andrew claimed he withstood the force of 8,000 pounds of construction equipment. What do you think? Is it possible? We'll tell you at the end of the show. So that leaves us with Mr. Andrew Jepson, run over by a steamroller and lived to tell the tale. Could this really be true? Could the very machine designed to flatten everything in its path actually fail to flatten a man? Yes, it can. Andrew is flattened completely from head to toe and lives on. This amazing story hit British headlines in 1998, and Andrew's incredible survival astonished all. So do any side effects of this brutal encounter with the steamroller remain?
I tend to feel the cold a bit more in my bones in the winter, and just pain in my foot really, where the roller made its first impact. I get a lot of pain in my foot. I can't explain how I managed to survive it. It's just...
His tale defies belief, but is completely true. It actually did happen. That's all for this show. We hope you guessed right. If not, don't despair. Another chance to test your judgment is coming soon on the next episode of Urban Legends. This is the story of innocent motorists who are gunned down by gangs for flashing their headlights. In June 1998, the Los Angeles Police Department issued the following warning.
This is a public service announcement. Drivers are warned to beware of any vehicle driving without their headlights at night. If you see a car with no lights, do not flash them. The occupants are considered armed and extremely dangerous. If you see a car with no lights, call 911 immediately.
The notice was posted throughout Los Angeles, but after 2 months, the shootings stopped just as quickly as they had started. This is the story. Meet Tyrell Simpson, 26 years old, LA gang leader. At least he used to be. Meet Kenyon Hurd. Kenyon idolized Tyrell and was desperate to become a fully fledged member of his gang.
I ran with the juniors. We looked up to the bigger guys. You know, we were the little guys. You know, Tyrell used to call us his little soldiers.
Kenyon knew that in order to move up the ranks from little soldier, there was a price to pay.
To become a full member, you had to pass initiation.
LAPD officer and gang crime specialist Gaspar Areza trails the mean streets of LA and deals with gangs firsthand. He knows their history.
Traditionally, an African-American gang that stemmed from the 40s and 50s.
By the 90s, this gang grew into a well-established outfit with its own rules and rites of passage.
They perform these initiations into these gangs. A junior member who's not yet full-fledged will chase down any car that has given them a courtesy light to tell them that their headlamps are off and unleash the full magazine into that car.
Desperate to be part of their crew, Kenyon would do just about anything to join them.
This is how it's going down. You drive your car, no lights on. Now the first person you see, flash their lights at you, follow them, all right? Name of the game is flash and blast.
The people who are shot down in these vehicles are usually anonymous people. They have nothing to do with gangs at all. They're just the first people that happen to give them a courtesy flash.
So Kenyon knew what he had to do, and he set out that day, determined to kill.
I knew I had to do it. You know, everybody knew if you didn't kill to prove your loyalty to Tyrell, then he was gonna kill you. I remember like it was yesterday. I came out fresh. I had everything on brand new. Even my underwear was brand new. I even had a new gun for the day, you know? Came out, met up with my homeboys. You know, we hit the strip, drinking, smoking. 10 p.m. sharp. Wow, when I slap off my headlights. Somebody flashed me. I U-turned, wheeled up behind them, and man, the speed I was coming, they knew they was in trouble. All I could see was silhouettes, you know, so I just aimed and squeezed. Bang, 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 click, click, click. I just drove off, man. I was elated. I'm here, you know what I mean?
Kenyon had made his first kill. He was now a full-fledged gang member. Tyrell would be proud of his little soldier, except Tyrell was dead. Tyrell was the driver who had flashed Kenyon. He was now lying dead in a pool of blood, 3 bullets in his chest. In a bizarre twist of fate, Tyrell had been out in the hood, looking for his new recruit. Everyone knew Tyrell's car, a white Lincoln Continental. But that day, the Lincoln was in the repair shop and Tyrell was in another car. When Tyrell flashed at Kenyon to pull over, Kenyon didn't recognize his boss in such a small car.
If I didn't carry out the orders that Tyrell gave me, he would have killed me. That's deep.
Only 17 years old, Kenyon had committed the crime as a juvenile, and after serving 7 years in Mira Loma Detention Center, he was released on parole in September 2005. But is this story true? And what about Kenyon and his car flash killing? Sorry, but it's not true. This particular tale has been set in many parts of the world where gangs exist. The US, Canada, and even Europe. The story starts by some form of an announcement, then it spreads like wildfire by word of mouth and email, telling people to beware. However, there's never been a single verified story anywhere of such a gang initiation ritual. So feel free to flash your headlights as a courtesy, without dire consequences. First up, can sharp pencils kill? For many teenagers at Catherine Gable's school in Portland, Oregon, high school was the best days of their lives. But not all students felt that way. Alex Forbes' school days were filled with academic highs, but no one knew about his emotional lows. Not even his mother, Karen Forbes.
He had a straight A record, always did, ever since he was in kindergarten, really. You know, we never tried to push him or anything like that. He just this innate ability to do really well at school.
Only now is she able to talk openly. Karen Forbes continues to struggle to make sense of the tragedy surrounding her gifted son. Her family life was left shattered, her marriage broken. She's been treated for depression and undergoes weekly therapy. It seems nothing will fill the void left by her son. But Karen's loss is also shared by her older son. He lives with his father in a different city, but they both declined to be interviewed. Alex touched the lives of many in his brief life. Meet Alex's classmate, Melanie McGinnis. She too was keenly aware of Alex's academic ability, but unaware of his emotional problems.
You know, he was a science whiz. He could do everything, you know, chemistry, biology, physics, and he'd finish all his homework and, you know, projects in half the time as everyone else did. And then he'd sit there and help me with mine.
Alex, I don't understand the mechanism of phototropism.
Alex was falling madly in love with Melanie, but she doesn't realize it. Alex is so shy, he can't tell her how he feels.
You know, we were kind of close.
But not close enough for Alex. Unable to attract Melanie with anything more than his mind, Alex is frustrated and forlorn, and it becomes more and more difficult for him to hide his emotions. In the days leading up to an exam, he's unable to focus, and for someone so bright, he is strangely concerned about the big test.
Before that particular exam, he spent hours and hours alone in his room. You know, I asked him if he was worried about that particular test or anything, and he was just like, oh, I just want to do really well on it. And I was like, great, okay.
The day of the test arrives. Those close to Alex are about to witness just how troubled he is. Meet exam monitor Dave Edlins.
I'll never forget that day.
This is a very important exam.
I oversaw the test. The exam is supposed to last 3 hours.
The test itself should have posed no challenge to Alex. He'd routinely finished exams early. His classmates soon learned that something was up with Alex.
He was sitting there sharpening all these pencils. There was shavings, you know, all over his desk and all over the floor, and they were everywhere.
Alex's fixation with Melanie and pencil sharpening catches the attention of others in the class.
Some were looking over at him because of the noise he was making with the pencils. And I noticed he was looking at the McGinnis girl.
I was sitting across from him, and then he just had these two pencils. They looked pretty sharp.
What happened next was, it was like, I don't know, it's like something out of a movie or something. I walked toward him.
He just took the two pencils and put them up his nose. And I giggled a little because it looked funny, you know. There was this horrible thudding noise. It was horrible. It was just really horrible.
Screaming, and everybody was in chaos.
The pencils had been driven into Alex's brain. He died instantly. On the back of his exam paper, a chilling suicide note.
I mean, I just read the note that he wrote over and over and over again. Achieving excellence is easy for me, but I can never achieve the excellence of love.
They gave all the kids in that class who saw Alex do that, they gave them all like a 4.0, high grade, regardless of how they did.
There is a bittersweet irony to Alex's story. Things could have turned out differently.
I did kind of like him. I was attracted to him. But it's not something I would have told my friends because, you know, he wasn't that cool. But, you know, if he had maybe tried to kiss me or something while we were studying, I probably would have let him.
This classroom drama is a sad tale with a shocking end. But is it true? Can someone kill themselves by jamming a pencil through their nose and into the brain? Is it the lovesick teenager, dead as a result of sharp pencils piercing his brain? Well, we all know that putting anything up your nose is dangerous, but in this case, the story is completely false. It never happened, but it is a well-worn urban legend, the result of a very dark imagination. People have tried it before, but despite being extremely dangerous, no one has ever died. But please don't try it. Freiburg, Germany. This is a story about a woman and her pet parrot, but not just any pet parrot, an African gray parrot with a gift for mimicry. Meet Hugo. This is the owner and best friend, Regina Seifert. In 1988, Regina has just married the man of her dreams, Romeo. They had found each other after Regina, looking for a soulmate, had placed a personal ad in the newspaper. Regina knew she had found Mr. Right.
He wrote that he might like to sit in front of the fire with a glass of wine, listening to nice music, maybe go dancing. Really everything that a woman wants to hear and everything that a woman would like to do.
Love bloomed, and after a quick courtship, the two married. But he's away a lot of time on business, so that leaves a lot of time for Regina and Hugo to bond. The parrot is a fantastic companion, and she spends hours in conversation with the bird. The power of speech comes naturally to these creatures. Meet parrot expert, Sonny Stollenmeyer.
The grey parrot is probably most famous for its speaking ability, purely because it can pick up so many words, use them in context, and use different tones in its voice, like a female or male voice. You can tell the distinction. And also they make great pets because they are quite affectionate and they interact with the family a lot.
Regina and Hugo are truly a pair. But Romeo is also looking for a little companionship, but not with a parrot.
Yes, Uta.
Romeo's business trips are all a lie. He's having an affair with a woman named Uta.
I know, Uta, I miss you too. Look, we go out on a little vacation.
Regina is oblivious, and Romeo thinks he's getting away with it. But what he doesn't notice is that someone else in the house is on to him, someone whose intelligence he seriously underestimates.
It's between you and I. I adore you, Uta.
Hugo accurately hones an impression of Romeo, and his favorite new word is something he's hearing a lot, a woman's name, Uta.
Who is Uta? Who is Uta? Tell me, who is Uta?
That's gestutzt. I was very shocked because we don't know any Uta. So I thought there must be something wrong here. There's no Uta amongst our friends. There's no Uta in the family. Who is this Uta?
Hugo is relentless with his calls for Uta, delivered in a voice that perfectly mimics husband Romeo. Regina's suspicions lead her to do something she's never done: open her husband's mail.
I saw that there was a trip for two, booked to Paris, for Uta, such and such.
Who is she?
All right. Uta is my mistress. Are you happy now?
Romeo's affair is now in the open. Regina makes her intentions clear as well.
Go and be with Uta.
Better that than a bloody parrot.
Hugo has played the stool pigeon by sticking his beak into Romeo's affair. Regina's marriage is over, but the friendship between a woman and her parrot lives on. Did a parrot really help to uncover a cheating husband? Did this happen? So that leaves us with the little feathered fellow named Hugo, the story of the parrot that could mimic voices and spill the beans about an affair. That was totally true. He really did listen, learn, and repeat Regina's cheating husband's phone calls, tipping off his owner. For those who know parrots, the behavior isn't a surprise.
Very common for parrots to be protective over the one they choose to be their mate. So if they consider another person to be an intruder on that relationship, they will defend their particular mate.
Polly, or Hugo in this case, really does deserve a cracker. So, did you guess correctly? If you were thrown off by the talking bird, never mind. There will be 3 more stories for you to consider on the next Urban Legends. Budapest, Hungary, 2000. The Erdos Institute for the Mentally Ill is home to Magda Selassie, a woman who has suffered a mental breakdown after the death of her husband. She has only one surviving relative. Meet librarian Susanne Selassie.
Her husband, he dies in accident at work. He works in the mines, and he was crushed by a cart.
The hospital is bleak, overcrowded, and underfunded, but it's the only option for her cousin.
I brought you a cake. I visit, but she's out of her mind. She does not know I'm there.
Susanne's visits become less frequent, and although Magda is her only relative, she decides never to go back.
My own parents are gone, no boyfriend, children. So it was a lonely time for me.
November 2005. Susanne's quiet life with her books was about to change with one phone call.
I received a phone call from the Erdős Institute, and they phoned to say that Magda, she is dead. I am shocked because this is unexpected.
She goes straight to the Institute, but her mind is spinning with the grim news and questions surrounding her cousin's death.
An orderly comes to collect me from waiting room. She is a pretty young lady, around 25. She has on white overall. She says, I take your bag and coat, you wait here, I'll hang them in the other room. And then she disappears.
Susanne is unaware that the pretty young woman is no hospital orderly, but a clever patient who seizes the opportunity and Susanne's identity.
I wait for an hour, for nearly 2. At this, I think something is not right, so I make for the door.
Excuse me.
You'll sit down there.
What are you doing? This is outrageous.
Only a man in white coat, he stops me from leaving. And he puts a hand on me and pushes me back inside the room.
Let go of me.
So angry, I strike his cheek. Men rush in, and one of them, he has a needle, and he jabs it in me.
Susanne wakes up to a nightmare.
I start banging on the door.
Help! Help! Get me out of here! Who put
Her calls for help go unnoticed. Mingling now with the other residents of the asylum, she has one last hope to regain freedom.
I speak to a woman.
I'm not supposed to be here. Please go look for me. Please go look. I'm sorry.
Susanne learns that the Erdős Institute of Mental Health is not the efficient hospital she originally thought it was. Past the reception area, patients are routinely restrained and drugged for days on end.
They give me more and more sedative. I am not able to speak. I cannot complain anymore. Days go by, weeks.
Fortunately for Susanne, her nightmare doesn't last forever. The fugitive inmate is arrested for an unrelated offense. The Institute realizes the mistake. Meet Institute Director Dorica Istvan.
The first we were aware that something was not right was when the authority came in and wished to see Jolashka Hunyadi. We went to fetch her from her room, and then they checked the photograph with their head against her and realized that is actually not Jolashka Hunyadi, this is Susanna Selassie.
The Institute maintains it is blameless for its mistake.
According to the records, all our patients, 312 in total, were in. As we are doing a weekly head count, that's what the head count told us. So there was no any way that we could have known.
Susanne is released with apologies from the Institute, but it offers her little comfort.
52 days. I spent 52 days in the Erdős Institute. It's madness.
It may be madness, but do you believe this case of mistaken identity? Did it happen? Did the Hungarian librarian get locked up at the mental institution when she was mistaken for one of the patients? Was it true? No, false. Stories of sane people being locked up in a mental hospital have been circulating since the 50s, and they all play to our fears of mistaken or stolen identity, but they're just not true. The cruise ship, an international symbol of elegance, the transport of choice for those who want complete luxury and style. And yet, the sea has been the center of some dreadful disasters. Meet holiday travelers Dr. Brendan Wynne and his wife, Patricia. The Wynne's happy ocean voyage is drawing to a close when they become involved in a bizarre incident. Lurking on board is an accident waiting to happen. Passengers, including Mrs. Wynne, had noticed something unusual about the bathrooms.
We sort of commented on the sound that the toilets made when you flushed them. This was not a normal sound. This was a very loud mechanical vroom when the toilets were flushed.
The good ship Pegasus was built in 1972 and had all the latest conveniences, including a state-of-the-art industrial sewage suction pump. This meant the onboard toilets operated with the use of a very powerful vacuum, and they worked well until one fateful evening in 1986 while docked in Vancouver, Canada.
An announcement came over the loudspeaker that said, "Would the skipper please come to the front desk for an emergency, and if there's a doctor on board, could the doctor please come to the front desk for an emergency?"
Dr. Wynne is summoned along with his wife, who's a qualified nurse. They are taken to the cabin of Mrs. Helen Larson, where they see something neither of them was quite prepared for.
You'll be all right.
You will.
Seems to be a problem here.
This woman, about age 70 or so, was lying on her bunk on her side.
At least 10, 12 feet of small intestine was lying in the bed behind her. She was going into shock, and because of her critical condition, we wanted to get her to a hospital as quickly as possible.
Mrs. Larson's intestines are still attached to her body, but entirely outside her abdomen. Stunned though they are, the Wynnes immediately move to stabilize the patient.
Her husband didn't say too much, except that she was on the toilet when this happened.
She had gone into the bathroom. This was a very small cabin, and she had a bowel movement.
Mrs. Larson's thighs create an airtight seal around the toilet bowl. While sitting down, she flushes, and the vacuum power sucks out her small intestines. Luckily for Mrs. Larson, the ship is in port. She's rushed to the nearest hospital where surgeons successfully put her bowel back in place. It's an amazing, gut-wrenching story that makes you queasy just thinking about it. But is it true? So that leaves us with the incredible story of the woman who flushed while sitting on a toilet and had a portion of her small intestine pulled from her body. Yes, it's completely true. The Pegasus was a real ship with a powerful vacuum pump toilet system that in 1986 did the damage. Mrs. Larson really was a passenger on that ship who survived the incident. Dr. Wynne really is a doctor who initially attended to Mrs. Larson.
It was a strange sight, a sight I had never seen before.
To this day, the Wynnes are wary of strange toilets.
On a boat or on an airplane, I do stand up.
That's all we have for you this time. Did you guess the real story? Well, if not, we'll give you another chance to test your truth-seeking ability on the next Urban Legend.
Oh, I loved it.
Marriages are never easy. There are bound to be ups and downs, good times and bad. But if you can make it through the tough spots, whatever they may be, then you've got a chance of going the distance. This happy couple have had their share of marital strife, including one time in June 2002, when it appeared the marriage was over. Drastic measures, however, were needed to help them hang on. Meet magician Jake Fenn and his wife Ursabet from Debrecen, Hungary.
Well, for a while there she was crazy, always nagging. Nothing I did was right, everything wrong. You know. Nag, all the time. Silly little things. If I forget to mow the lawn, or if I not put the cutlery in the right place.
That's the minimum you could do.
She was driving me crazy. It was very hard because I wanted to be with her, but I just couldn't put up with it.
Jake loves his wife, but he's at the end of his rope. Instead of getting help, though, he hatches his own plan.
You anymore.
I needed to do something that would scare her, frighten her, make her realize that it was not working. It sounds so stupid now, but I decided that I would hang myself.
Meet Gladina McMahon, relationship expert. She's seen it all before.
It might sound a completely crazy thing to say, but when you don't know what else to do, you often do crazy things.
Jake's plan isn't a suicide bid. As a magician, Jake has a few tricks up his sleeve. The fake hanging would merely be a ruse to shock Ursabet into thinking about her life empty without Jake.
Shock tactics can work, but I really wouldn't advise them because there's a 50-50 chance they'll backfire, and when they do backfire, they backfire badly.
While Ursabet is out, Jake and his best friend Janos hurry to get the stunt in place. But the noise attracts the unwelcome attention of Jake's meddling and nosy neighbor, Judith Barani.
Yes, can I help you?
You make the noise. I will complain to Compilation.
Go ahead.
Janos quickly dismisses Judith and returns to help Jake with the rig, which now looks terrifyingly convincing. The stage is set, and Janos leaves Jake for his starring moment. Ursabet returns home, but her reaction is not the one Jake is hoping for.
I was shocked, and I screamed and I passed out. It was the shock of my life. I thought he was dead. I thought the man I loved was dead.
God.
Jake didn't think Ursabet would faint. Now he's stuck.
I can't get down. I am stuck, hanging, and Ursabet is laying on the floor, and there's nothing that I can do.
All Jake can do is wait for Ursabet to come around and then try to explain himself. But Judith Barani, sensing something wasn't right, comes back to the house, but this time she enters. His suspicions roused, Jake keeps quiet and soon realizes his neighbor is up to no good.
She see Ursabet on the floor, and I'm hanging there, and I say nothing. And she step over Ursabet, and she pick up Ursabet's purse, and she took money. And I'm thinking, what is she doing? She's stealing from us.
Jake is thinking of retaliation, so he decides to play a trick. But just like his wife before, the reaction is not one he anticipates.
I kick her square in the buttocks. And she scream, and she clasp her chest, and then she fall on the floor.
Unlike Ursabet, she isn't going to get up again.
I awoke and I saw him that he was alive, and I was very happy. My heart was filled with joy. I told him it was the worst idea he could have had, and then I saw Judith.
Judith is lying on the floor dead. They have no choice but to inform the police. Jake is taken to the station for questioning, but he is let off the hook.
It was death by misadventure, and they say not my fault, and they say I can go.
It might have ended in tragedy for Mrs. Barani, but for Jake and Ursabet, it was the beginning of a new life together.
Now I see that I was crazy.
I gave him a hard time for no reason. Oh, it's like we were married all over again.
Now reconciled and very much in love, Jake felt the stunt was worth it, but he would never consider doing anything like that again. A smart decision, but are you smart enough to figure out if this story is true or false? If you thought the fake hanging story was true, you'd be completely wrong. The story about the desperate magician is just an illusion. It surfaced in the late 70s, and the details change. The thieving neighbor is a man, but the story is always said to have happened in Hungary. Meet Klaus Tauber, a traveling salesman from Munich, Germany, who in May 1997 had a business trip to Rio he'd never forget.
Somebody stole my kidney.
Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Over 4 million tourists flock to the South American hotspot every year to soak up the culture. Visitors seldom stray far from the beaches because Rio is home to some of the world's most vicious gangs, responsible for over 4,000 murders a year and thousands of kidnapping, robbery, and extortion cases. And there's a new area of criminal enterprise that's caught one of Rio's hardened cops by surprise. Meet Detective Jose Conde of Rio's 12th Precinct.
Now they have another issue, trafficking human organs.
In Brazil, there's a black market for everything, including human body organs. Last year, over 400 kidneys were bought and sold on the black market. Most were taken unwillingly from poor slum dwellers. Kidney thefts were largely unreported outside of Brazil. But then in May 1997, Klaus Tauber visited Rio.
I've been sent to South America, to Brazil. I work for an electronic parts company and sell electronic parts. Now I stay in Rio, in a really pretty place, Gavea. But this night I feel a little bored.
Rio's exotic nightlife would lead him right into the lair of the kidney thief.
The problem is that here in Gavea, there's just a half mile up to here into Rocinha. Rocinha is a bad place to be after dark. Even worse for a policeman to be after dark.
I leave my hotel and go up the hill. I see or hear loud music, so I decide, oh, there's a discotheque. So I decide I go in.
Klaus's search for a good time led him here.
Straight away I go to the bar, looked around. Funky place, beautiful girls, you know, Brazilians. And then one woman come to me, very pretty. You know, and I'm a married man, but we talk, only talk. Then I drank a couple more. And then she decides, okay, I take it from the bar and bring it to me.
Klaus had fallen into an elaborate entrapment scam. He didn't know that his last drink was a concoction that delivered a knockout punch. Drugged and deluded, Klaus was about to become the first foreign victim of Rio's kidney trade. Meet British doctor and kidney expert Matthew Hollins of the All Souls Hospital, Liverpool.
You'd be surprised how easy it might be to take a man's kidney. The conventional operation involves cutting the skin from the back here, around just under the 12th rib, quite a large incision coming round to the front, and then that enables you to get access to the back of the patient and remove the kidney. Provided you have an operating theatre, an anaesthetist, a skilled nurse, and time, you can remove a kidney safely and efficiently. This is the sort of thing that's done on battlefield operation theatres all the time in difficult situations.
The next day, I wake up and I feel pain. Here on the left side. Freezing cold. Blood everywhere.
He didn't know it yet, but Klaus was missing his left kidney.
In one operation, they can make $10,000. $10,000 is a lot of money in the city of Rio de Janeiro.
The thieves were not, however, entirely without mercy. Klaus had been left in a bath of ice that slowed down his blood loss. They had also left behind a fully charged cell phone and the number for the local Rio emergency services. Although they commit brutal crimes, the thieves prefer to leave their victims alive. In Rio, kidney theft carries a maximum of 7 years, whereas murder is punished by death.
The gangs think, oh, he has so much, and he doesn't need the both kidneys anyway. We can leave it to him with just one. No problem, let's take it. That's what they think.
Klaus then attempted to use the cell phone to call for emergency medical help. He passed out, but officials were able to trace the call and help soon arrived. Klaus woke up 2 days later in the hospital.
Then comes the doctor to me and say, my left kidney is gone. Somebody stole my kidney. Then it's really a big shock for me. Money, okay, and mobile phones, but not the kidney.
10 years later, Klaus lives on without his left kidney, and to this day, he still doesn't know where it went. He hasn't left Europe since. So is there a thriving trade in body parts in Rio de Janeiro? And was Klaus Tauber really a victim of kidney theft? You'll find out at the end of the show. Is it Klaus Tauber and his missing kidney? Nonsense. Random back-alley kidney stealing just won't work. The tissue and blood types of the donor and recipient must be carefully matched. You can't just grab a tourist, steal a kidney, and hope to find a buyer. First up, a fishy tale. April 24th, 2004. Folsom State Prison, Sacramento, California. After 8 years in prison for armed robbery, Jack de Miguel is released. Looking forward to this day is his girlfriend, Mae Brown.
Jack's always gotten into trouble. Guns, drugs, gangs. He's done a lot. He's not like he wasn't a good boy, but when you love somebody, you love somebody, so.
His release is a reunion with his fellow bad boy best friend. Meet Dwayne Charuto.
How about that? Yeah? One night we were drinking a little too much and went into the 7-Eleven and we decided to rob the place. We got away with big fat $111. Cost us 8 years each in jail. The second he got out of there, man, we knew we were just gonna go back to partying and drinking just like before.
Jack, his girlfriend Mae, and his best buddy Dwayne are together again. Jack is determined to make up for lost time.
Just wanted to go out and celebrate, really.
On his first night of freedom, Jack picks up right where he left off. Downing beer after beer after beer. Jack, Mae, and Dwayne decide it's time to eat. Their choice, a sushi restaurant. Jack de Miguel doesn't know that this is to be the last meal of a condemned man.
Well, yeah, can we get another? Can we get another round?
Out of nowhere, Jackie starts mouthing off to this guy, our waiter.
Bartender, upkeep, beer. Garçon.
Boy, he was carrying on like he usually did. He was just joking though, but you know, some people, they just can't take a joke. They don't understand Jackie boy sometimes.
Hey, food. Hey, fung.
For the restaurant's waitstaff, Jack's loud outbursts are becoming hard to ignore, especially when he begins to complain about the food.
He wasn't too happy, man. I think they messed up. Must have been week old fish they had just laying out in the back somewhere. I guess, you know, we didn't look like the type who would eat at a place like that, and I guess they didn't think we'd know the difference, so got a little ugly after that. He was yelling at the waiter, "You call this fresh fish?"
I feel fresh. You want to see fresh? I'll show you fresh fish.
So they had this big aquarium at the front with all these tropical fish. He grabbed a big old goldfish right out of it, just scooped it out with his hand like a bear by a river, you know?
His next move, as well as being cruel, is also very stupid. Jack doesn't realize that his catch of the day isn't a goldfish.
Right here.
And everybody in the restaurant was looking at this point. Some people were laughing, some just looked real shocked. And he picked that fish up, he swallowed it whole.
And with that, Jack seals his fate. He downs a porcupine pufferfish known as the Japanese fugu. Its flesh is much prized in sushi, but its liver and skin are highly poisonous. They contain a neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin. It causes muscle paralysis and eventually asphyxiation. There is no known antidote for this poison. Complicating things for Jack is the fact that the fish has lived up to its name. When agitated, the pufferfish instantly puffs up to 5 times its normal size, in this case, fatally blocking Jack's windpipe.
Jackie, he started grabbing his throat like this, and he was choking and convulsing. He was on the ground, shaking. We didn't react in time, and less than a minute later, Jackie was gone.
So, did Jack die from eating the poisonous pufferfish? Is this a true story? Or killer sushi? Well, if you went for the fish, you'd be absolutely wrong. Make no mistake, the fugu fish is poisonous and must be carefully prepared to make it edible. But Jack didn't die from it. Once the pufferfish had been taken out of the tank, it would have puffed up in a panic, making it impossible to swallow, just like this story. Ever since the dawn of time, man has been drawn to the skies. From Leonardo da Vinci to the Wright brothers, everyone has an idea for a flying machine, including Larry Walters of Los Angeles, California. He launched his contraption from his backyard in 1982. He survived that stunt, but has since passed away. But collaborator Steve Gottlieb remembers his friend fondly.
He had the interest in flying ever since he was a child. It was the idea of being able to fly by himself.
In July 1982, after 20 years of fantasizing and planning, the dream became a reality. Larry's plan was to launch his homemade flying contraption from his own backyard and gently journey eastward over Los Angeles.
And when he picked out a lawn chair to be the vehicle that he sat in to transport him, hey, it was light, it served the purpose, and that's what he did.
The chair's low-tech flying system consisted of a bunch of helium weather balloons and 8 gallons of water for counterweight. His landing gear was a pellet gun for shooting out the balloons.
He got in the chair. There were all these last-minute thoughts. Larry, you sure you want to go? His girlfriend, almost in tears, she was pleading with him, Larry, are you sure?
Larry was sure he wanted to go for it, but what he hadn't realized was that he'd grossly overestimated the number of weather balloons he needed. Rather than floating gently upwards, the balloons rocketed him into the sky faster than he had intended, and much higher than he wanted to go. His friends on the ground quickly lost sight of Larry and his flying lawn chair. And, much like the scale model in her demonstration, the wind quickly took Larry into restricted airspace. A pilot flying his plane picked up the intriguing visual. Edward Duanes was up in the sky that day too, piloting a TWA flight from Los Angeles to Washington.
As we turned east at about 7,000 or 8,000 feet, at the 10 o'clock position I happened to see this cluster of balloons. And then as I focused more on it, I could see that there was a person hanging on the bottom of these balloons.
Concerned for Larry's predicament, Edward contacted the control tower to report the odd sighting.
This is TWA 231, level at 16,000 feet. We have a man in a chair attached to balloons at our 10 o'clock position, range 5 miles.
Larry was heading for some very dangerous territory.
The approach corridors to Los Angeles were a little bit north of his position, but the wind currents would push him almost directly north, just about the right glide slope to be crossing those approach corridors of Los Angeles.
Not only was Larry heading into an LAX flight path, but he had reached 16,000 feet and was rapidly rising to uncharted heights in a lawn chair.
At 16,000 feet, it's quite cool. Above 10,000, you really should start to have some supplemental oxygen.
Freezing cold and gasping for breath, Larry knew he had to find a safe, steady way down.
He took out the pellet gun and aimed up at the lower level of balloons, started shooting them out.
If you shoot one too many, you're going to come down at a tremendous rate, or if you don't shoot enough of them, it may take forever to come down.
But as he shot his 7th balloon, he accidentally dropped his gun. By an amazing stroke of luck, Larry had shot out just enough balloons for an even and steady descent. He'd survived a treacherous takeoff, extreme altitudes, and exposure to the elements, but the most dangerous part was yet to come, the landing. Meet Jerry Fleck, who witnessed firsthand the treacherous ending to Larry's escapade.
I just looked out my back door and I saw this tower of balloons. It looked like weather balloons.
From his vantage point, Jerry could see the chair was headed for trouble. As he was approaching the ground, the wind was blowing the rickety contraption directly toward a set of live power lines.
The chair had come just underneath the power lines and it swung into this backyard, and there were some people that were tracking him, and they got there and grabbed the chair as he came swinging in to hold it. Otherwise, he probably would have gone right back up with the wind blowing the balloons and into the power lines.
So, did Larry really make it safely down to land and into aviation history books? Or is this just a load of hot air? So that leaves us with Larry Walters, the man who took to the skies in his lawn chair. Very bizarre, very strange, but also very true. And here's the actual footage to prove it, shot by his team on that unbelievable day.
My altitude's 1,500 feet. Do you copy? Over. I copy. Are you sure you're okay? There's planes up there. We can hear.
That concludes our walk on the wild side. The world of urban legends is dark, bizarre, and twisted, and sometimes true. Detroit, Motor City, and home to the sweet R&B sounds of Motown. It's the setting for our story about a man who's one of life's players. Meet Darrell J. Washington, a man who's locked in a cycle of gambling and cheating. His brother can attest to that. Meet Marcellus Washington.
Darrell, that guy, always looking to make a quick buck. Always. Man, I must have bankrolled that fool for years.
Darrell always hit up Marcellus for cash. But when it came to payback, well, that hardly happened. Meet Deandra Washington, Darrell's ex-wife.
He had the best clothes, the best moves, and he had the smoothest talk.
But Deandra caught Darrell using that smooth talk on other women. He was a hard man to trust, but she forgives him.
I know I should have kicked him to the curb right then and there, but I made a commitment to him. I mean, Darrell was my man, for better or worse.
His various schemes and gambling are pulling in some serious dough.
Well, he was buying me furs and jewelry.
But Darrell was held in the vice of gambling.
This guy will bet on anything and everything.
Wow! Yes! Wow! Yeah!
Darrell was hitting a lucky streak. That's where all his money was coming from.
Poker and the ponies are his daily passion. But his biggest dream was hitting the big one, a lottery.
He would use the lottery every single week like it was a religion.
Thank God it wasn't drugs or gangs. Things were going good. We had money, and it was one of those good times.
But the good times and all the winnings are taking a toll on Darrell.
Wow!
It was changing his personality.
This what I'm good at.
June 21st, 2001, Darrell and Deandra are out for dinner.
Right back. Boom! Healing. Can we talk about something else? You want to talk about what you're good at? This is what I'm good at.
Darrell's attitude is getting on Deandra's nerves.
No, let's talk about me. Let's talk about our winnings.
He started all his bragging. And, you know, I'm really living large now. It's all me. I'm the man.
I want it.
Deandra decides to bring Darrell down to earth.
I'll be right back, baby.
I miss you.
I miss you too.
Deandra knows Darrell will want to know the results of that night's lottery, so she quickly concocts a plan that involves the waiter.
And I told the waiter, he's going to come back, and he's going to ask you what are the lottery numbers for this week.
Can I get you to help me play a joke on him?
Darrell always played the same numbers, and Deandra knows them by heart. She writes them on a napkin for the waiter to deliver when Darrell asks.
And so Darrell came back from the John, and he checked his watch, 8:30, so he knew the lottery numbers were out.
Okay, repeat. Could you just check the lottery numbers for me?
And the waiter went, and he did exactly what I told him to.
I think I got
the waiter returns and gives the numbers to Darrell.
Darrell just froze, and he starts looking confused. And then he starts looking around himself, all crazy and bug-eyed.
I won! I'm on fire! Jesus! I'm like this! I love you!
Deandra's joke works.
You gambling fool. Sit down.
Just don't tell me to sit down.
Deandra starts to think the joke worked too well.
You need to shut your mouth.
The confrontation escalates, and then Darrell makes an amazing admission.
I just won $9.5 million. You know, I'm gonna run off with your sister Monique.
My sister?
Oh, yeah.
And she's more of a woman than you'll ever be.
That was all Darrell needed. He was off, convinced he'd won the multi-million-dollar prize. He couldn't cash the ticket until the office opened after the weekend. But he and Monique checked into a luxury hotel and started spending. With his credit card maxed out, Darrell uses the ticket as collateral. With a bill approaching $23,000, the hotel decides to check in on the winning ticket.
I'd have paid $1 million myself just to see the look on his face.
Your card has been rejected.
Sir, who's this? I don't know. No, I'm gonna be right back.
Hotel security hand Darrell over to the police on allegations of attempted fraud. But it all worked out well for Deandra in the end.
I got Daryl out of my life. I found out about my no-good sister. And I got myself a new man who treats me correctly, like a lady. So thank you, Daryl J. Washington, wherever you are.
I won! So a practical joke ends up delivering a bigger punchline than anyone could have imagined. But did you bet on it? If you had money on the story about gambler Daryl, who thinks his numbers have come up, then you're going to be out of pocket. That story was false. This well-worn urban legend showed up on the internet in 1996 as part of a series of jokes about gambling. The story is usually told the same way. A woman is the victim, and the man is always having a fling with the woman's sister. It plays on many emotions, from love and a sense of security to our risk-taker gambling streak. But you now know it's not true. Now on to the next tale that animal lovers find especially horrifying. Is it true that a woman microwaved her pet poodle? In Bordeaux, France, life was simple for Estelle Forget. She spent her time living a carefree life without all the trappings of modern technology. But it was her love of dogs that gave her inspiration, oddly enough, to embrace high-tech conveniences.
I love to use the computer. I am a poodle fancier, and I can keep in touch with like-minded breeders.
But it wasn't always so. There was a time when anything modern confounded Estelle. She would learn about the dangers of one new appliance the hard way.
My story is famous around the world now, see? It has been heard and seen in many media. I hope many people will take it as a lesson. I certainly learned it.
Estelle had one great passion in life. The senior citizen spent a lot of time with her dog Minky. Daily walks and daily companionship. Minky was a miniature poodle.
This little Minky was my partner in life. You know, we were always together.
Mrs. Forget liked to keep his coat clipped quite short, which meant a lot of grooming.
I buy new things for him. He had a bath, and I put little things in the bath and he smells good.
People pampering their pets is not new to Mrs. Forget's son, Gaston. As a fashion photographer, he lives in a fast world of extravagance. But what did seem over the top to him was his mother's bizarre method of drying the dog's hair after the bath.
Minky had to be neat and tidy, so she used to place him in the oven for 5 minutes.
Mrs. Forget believed that putting the dog in the oven for 5 minutes on the lowest setting was the best way to fluff up the frizzy poodle fur.
Always with the door open, of course. I'm not foolish.
Oh, there you are, Mama.
One day, Gaston arrived with some new kitchen gadgets, a way of pampering his mom to make her life easier.
Everything. A coffee machine, an ice cream making machine, a bread oven, everything.
At her age, Estelle Forget was skeptical about learning new technology. But the microwave did seem to capture her imagination.
I have to take her, guide her by the hand, show her how it works. You have no waste of time. You can use it so easily. You can eat food in seconds. And when I say that, bam, her face changes. Her eyes light up.
Pleased with her new time-saving device, Estelle took Minky out on his daily stroll.
It was lovely and sunny. So I said, come on, Minky, we are going to have a nice walk. And he was very happy, and we walked for quite a while.
A change in the weather was about to change everything for little Minky.
The clouds came. The sky was so dark. We had to run. I said, no, we can't stay outside. We have to go home.
Estelle didn't often take her poodle out in the rain. If he got wet, it was usually in a bathtub. And under those circumstances, she would have dried him the conventional way, in her oven. But this time, Minky was soaked and freezing. Estelle was panicked and wanted a faster way to dry off Minky and warm him up.
He was a bit agitated because it was so wet. So, what shall I do?
Do something. Only 5 minutes. And oh.
Estelle put the timer to 5 minutes and hit start. No animals were harmed in the making of this show. Here to illustrate the dangers of a microwave is a radiation specialist, Dr. Rick Ubik.
Microwaves vibrate the water molecules in food at 2,450 million times per second. That generates a lot of friction, that generates a lot of heat, and that's what cooks your food. So inside the body of the poodle, the fluids would become hot and then would start to vaporize. I can simulate what would have happened to the poodle with an egg, having a tough outside but a liquidy inside.
Ubik demonstrates what could have happened to the dog using this industrial microwave.
There you go.
While Minky was in the microwave, Estelle dried her hair.
And I entered the kitchen after 5 minutes or so. And what did I see? Oh, it was horrible. Horrible, my poor little Minky. What did I do? Oh, it was a nightmare.
A poodle in a microwave, a dark and twisted tale. But is it true? Find out at the end of the show. Was it Estelle Forget and her microwaved poodle? False. This is an age-old legend which has had slight variations throughout the years. The story of dogs, cats, and hamsters being dried in microwaves, ovens, and even dryers has been told for decades. Although the story isn't true, microwaves do kill, so please don't try this at home. First up, from misfortune to fortune. California, home of sun, sea, and surf. But in 2005, torrential rains caused widespread flooding and devastating landslides, sending homes crashing down a hillside and destroying an oceanside community. One man who was home at the time picks up the story. Meet Al Trevino.
I had gone to the office in my home, sent a few emails, and then sat down to read the paper, and the house started to squeak. Earth just opened up. All of these houses in front of me were just sliding down the hill. The road was buckling, and all of the soil below us was gone.
Al's house isn't destroyed, but it's left teetering on the edge of a cliff. The damage is estimated in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, money Al doesn't have. Worse still, his insurance doesn't cover damages caused by landslides. He's now homeless and penniless. The police allow a family member back into the doomed house one last time to recover any possessions that can be safely carried out. That job falls to Al's son. Meet Lawrence Trevino.
Well, once in the house, we had limited time, so
I went around grabbing anything that had value.
Due to the instability of the structure, Lawrence is only able to grab items from the side of the house that isn't leaning over the edge of the cliff. He is about to leave when he spots a familiar painting, not hanging on the wall, but sitting propped against it. He takes it.
A month prior, we had a very large party at the house for our 50th wedding anniversary. And I was going to show some slides of over the past 50 years on the wall. And so I took one of the large oil paintings down so I could use the wall.
Taking down that painting set in motion a series of events that turned Al Trevino's luck completely around. The painting in question was purchased for $20 at a yard sale several years earlier. It, along with a few other rescued belongings, is stored for safekeeping by a neighbor. Meet Pam Hagen, who just happens to be an art enthusiast. She recognizes the painting not as a $20 yard sale item, but something remarkable.
I looked it over, and I looked at the back, and I looked at the signature again, and on the back was written Kleitsch on the frame.
Kleitsch was a celebrated painter who lived in Laguna Beach in the 1920s. His paintings are highly collectible today, sometimes fetching hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So I know him. I know his work.
Al Trevino unknowingly sits on a garage sale gold mine, but it would need an expert to confirm it. Pam suggests that Al get the painting appraised by a local gallery owner and collector.
Redfern Gallery, Ray speaking.
Meet Ray Redfern.
Well, it was interesting driving up to Pam's house. Pam actually met me down by the police, and we got through the barricade and drove up the back way to her house. So I walked inside and saw the painting and went, wow, nice painting. Well, I was thrilled to see it. Recognized it as a Joseph Kleitsch immediately when I saw that it was real and from the period.
As it turns out, the painting is appraised at about $500,000. So what are the chances of this chain of coincidences happening? An undiscovered masterpiece bought for $20 at a yard sale? One of the only items rescued from a devastating landslide? It's left with a neighbor who happens to be an art expert and recognizes it for what it is? Did this really happen? So that leaves Al and his painting that turned out to be worth a great deal more than he knew. The story is true. In May 2005, Al Trevino of Laguna Beach, California really did lose his house in a landslide, and he didn't have insurance coverage. One of the items salvaged is a $20 painting that his neighbor helps determine is worth $500,000.
I mean, the probabilities are, 1 in a million or things like that.
1 in a million. All Al needed was a miracle, or a disaster in this case, to realize it. So, are you now a believer? Did you guess right? Well, if not, you can try again soon on the next episode of Urban Legend. First up, a deadly water hazard. West Palm Beach, Florida. The Palm and Dune Golf and Country Club. Meet David Lodbell, Paul Miles, and Kenny Boyle. Real estate entrepreneurs and avid golfers.
Hey, Kenny. Hey, Paul. And who's got my beer? All you did...
This trio used to be a foursome, as this home video shows.
What? Hey, look, come here. Give me that thing. Give me that thing. There he is. There's the man.
The fourth man was Scott McDonald. This is his story.
And where are those ladies?
July 2004. The four are out on the course for another round, except Scott's having a lousy day. It happens to all of them from time to time, but today, Scott can't seem to cope.
didn't seem like he could really focus. He wasn't concentrating too well. I think he was really getting pretty ticked off with himself.
He could swing and he could hit hard, but you know, he could never really get the ball to go where he wanted it to.
Scotty's losing, and the stress is getting to him. His frustration builds to the boiling point.
Well, at the fifth hole, he was teeing off, and the ball went straight into a water hazard. And he was, I mean, steaming mad. He just, you know, he went nuts. Yeah, we were all freaked out. We had never seen Scotty like that.
Scotty went even further.
In front of all of us, he just walked right into the water hole, you know, went to get his gloves.
We just went, come on, man, this is ridiculous. Let's go, forget about it. Once he had something set in his mind, that was it. He just couldn't let it go.
Scotty ignores his friends, so they move on to the next hole, figuring he'll catch up. They finish their round and make their way to the clubhouse to wait for their friend.
We just figured he's still hacking away through the fairways, any minute gonna come around the corner, cussing and ranting, and just sit down and join us back at the clubhouse.
One more Saturday over?
That was awesome.
Who does this remind you of?
As time passes, the guys become increasingly concerned by Scotty's no-show.
I think you should call his phone.
All right,
Wasn't answering.
where the hell are you?
A little odd for him. He always answers his cell.
Having fun right now.
Yeah, we figured we'd better go out and look for him.
They make their way back to the spot where they left Scotty. They find his clubs, some still in the water. Some of his clothes are on the bank, along with the cell phone he would never leave behind. Concerned and completely baffled, the guys report Scotty's disappearance to the club. Police are called in immediately, and the search begins. 2 days later, David finally gets word from the police.
And they had told me what had happened, that they found Scotty.
Police had responded to another golfer's report, a sighting of an alligator on the green near the water hazard on the fifth hole. Authorities located the animal, then tranquilized it. It had to be removed from the course as reptile behavior can be unpredictable and dangerous. Meet reptile expert Andrew Lentini.
These animals are stealth predators. They will lurk in murky waters where you just can't see the animal, and the only thing exposed is just the two eyes and the nostrils up. And a lot of animals will approach a body of water and not see the danger that's there until it's too late. And these animals literally explode out of the water. They're very powerful animals, and when they want to move quickly, they're lightning fast.
Noting the bulge in the stomach of the 16.5-foot reptile and one missing golfer reported 2 days earlier, police decide to put it down. Inside the belly of the beast, a gruesome discovery: a partially digested human arm and torso. Fingerprint records match those of the missing Scotty.
Looking back on it now, I mean, could we do things different? Yeah, I wish that we had, but you'd never think, I mean, on a golf course that something like that could happen.
To the contrary, this story proves that anything can happen on a golf course. But is this story a hole-in-one or just full of holes? Did the frustrated golfer end up being lunch for an alligator at the water hazard? No, it's false. This is a popular urban legend that was passed off as fact when it surfaced on the internet in 1998. No news organization found the story fit to be reported as fact because there aren't any facts. Although alligators have been known to bite golfers, they've never devoured them. Golf courses with these living water hazards warn golfers to give the gators a wide berth. But usually, it's the reptiles that prefer to steer clear of humans. January in Spokane, Washington. Tons of snow, frigid temperatures, and long nights. For most, there's plenty to do in a big city, but the guys in this story wanted more.
Nice.
Kevin Blood and Dustin Rhodes were always looking to make their own fun.
You have to be kind of inventive. I mean, during the summer, there's a lot of things to do. There's water sports and rock climbing and things like that. But during the winter, if you're not really into winter sports, it gets pretty boring.
So, what to do?
Shoot guns a lot.
Throw a lot of parties.
Play computer games.
Make giant snowmen.
Their ongoing challenge? To come up with something new. Something to keep things interesting. On one particularly dull day, a heady mix of boredom, recklessness, and alcohol turns a heartfelt confession into a mischief-making prank.
We went to this bar downtown.
We started drinking.
After several beers, Kevin starts pouring his heart out to his buddies over his inability to meet girls and go out on dates.
I'm telling you, man, it's work and home. It's all I do with my life. Dustin and Josh were like, hey, you got a confidence problem with like the ladies. Just gotta get out, I gotta do something, I gotta meet people, but you know what? I got nothing. You know, you're kind of shy.
He keeps coming up to me, asking me how we can talk to girls.
Well, I don't think you're trying very hard.
I mean, we've tried everything we possibly could.
Kevin's friends think he simply needs a boost, something to get him over his chronic shyness. And what better way, they figure, than to have him face his fears in the nude.
Here's a suggestion. We'll go up to that diner on Highway 7.
We decided that he just needed to get a little self-confidence, and the best way we figured was for him just to get naked and run past a bunch of strangers.
It was like, well, I'm drunk, I'm young.
And with that, the tale of the Spokane Streakers is born.
I am so scared right now, but you know what? This is gonna be the greatest thing we've ever done.
With the cold winter air and the effects of the alcohol wearing off, Kevin is now grasping with the sobering realization of what they're about to do.
There's gonna be families eating dinner.
Every time you say you're gonna do something, you need to not have such a negative attitude. That's your problem.
Negative attitude? You're making me run naked through a restaurant.
Because it'll be fun.
The deal is done, and the streak is on. With their ingenious plan mapped out, and their buddy Josh along with his video camera to record the prank, the boys cruise to the diner.
Are you ready? I'm ready.
Each donning the perfect outfit for the occasion, a balaclava and a birthday suit.
We park on the side so they wouldn't see the license plates on the car. Then we would run in naked, do a lap around the restaurant, come back out, get in the car, and drive away.
Unfortunately for these guys, they aren't the only pranksters at the restaurant that night. As they flash for the diners, another opportunistic patron makes his move. Now, you could say that running around in a restaurant naked is a pretty stupid idea. But even more questionable is leaving your getaway vehicle idling and unlocked out front.
We ran out. Kevin just stops. As soon as he sees the car start taking off, I start chasing it down. Hey! Grab for the door handle. The dude turns, looks at me, smiles, and locks the door.
Hey! You're stealing my... Hey, you can't steal...
Now fully naked and totally exposed to the freezing winter air, they have nowhere to hide and absolutely no plan B.
What do we do now?
Let's get out of here. So we take off running behind the building, ran through a car dealership, and found like this apartment complex in the back that it was all outdoor staircasing, so we could run in and hide underneath the staircase.
Could things get any worse? Meet police officer David Beckley.
Well, I got a call on the radio of a report of a couple of people streaking, and I was a few miles away and started heading over there. Figured any streaker worth his weight would be gone by the time I got there.
Oh, guys, the calls!
Let me guess, this isn't what it looks like.
Our Spokane streakers are rounded up, unmasked, and carted off by the police. Luckily for them, Officer Beckley takes pity on the boys.
Threw them in the back of the car with the heat on and ended up just driving them home. Felt bad that they kind of been outside in the cold, so we didn't really pursue anything as far as charges against them, thinking that they'd been punished enough.
And so ends the silly tale of our Spokane streakers. Too funny to be true, or just dumb enough to make sense? What do you think? The Spokane Streakers story, on the other hand, is the naked truth. And to prove it, this is actual footage from the night in question, and it really did make them into local celebrities, for all the wrong reasons.
How does that happen? I don't know. Learned my lesson on that one. I guess it was just a desperate attempt to be more confident.
While the streak itself ended in embarrassment, the prank really did help cure Kevin's shyness.
Everybody calls me Streaker. All my buddies do. So, just call me Streaker. It's my name now.
So as they streak into the annals of history, only you know the difference between truth and fiction. Or do you? Test yourself next time on Urban Legends. Come with us back to California, 1969, where free love and mind-expanding drugs were very much a part of campus life. For the students at the heart of this story, however, the summer of love turned into a nightmare when they ran into a hippie guru and his pocket full of psychedelics. Meet Len Pilar.
There was me, and there was Harold, and there was Mike. We all dug the same music, and we all had the same values. We were all into the counterculture back then.
It was the war, it was drugs, it was free love, it was music, it was a little bit of everything, but we were looking for a little guidance, perhaps.
Len, Harold, and Mike find guidance in the form of underground guru Rudy Heisman.
We met this gentleman named Heisman. He was a little older than us.
We were like his disciples or something. I mean, he was almost a guru to us. He was very charismatic, and whatever he said, he struck a chord with us. Man.
It is your fault. It isn't God's fault. You mind if I take some of your weed?
No, go ahead. He was into drugs. He got us hooked up with some pretty heavy powders and potions in those days. And he'd use all our drugs. Of course, we were paying for them. He was using them.
You want to go back to my place?
He actually used to hit on our girlfriends, if I remember. But he was a legend in the underground, and we were pretty impressed with him. So we followed him around and listened to his preachings.
May 17th, 1969. Our young hippies follow Heisman to a remote woodland, where he's promised them their greatest trip ever. This would be a whole new chemical high, different from anything they'd ever tried before. Liquid LSD.
I mean, we'd done blotters, we'd done acid on paper, and that was okay, but this stuff was just, it was heavy, heavy.
Heisman administers drop after drop after drop of liquid LSD to the boys. A massive dose miscalculation with potentially disastrous results. Dr. Brian Goldman gives us his perspective on the mind-altering drug LSD.
The effect of LSD is to hit certain receptors in your body, serotonin receptors, which affect your ability to draw correct conclusions from ordinary stimuli. The other thing that LSD does is it can hit dopamine receptors, the pleasure receptors in the brain. So they can induce a tremendous sense of euphoria. So you might be induced to do things because you're in a state of exalted happiness or pleasure, and you're apt to agree with the suggestions that are put forth when you're in that mood because you're feeling so good.
By now, they're such slaves to the drug and slaves to Heisman. It's bad timing. Their guru is about to plant an idea in their susceptible minds that would change their lives forever.
The grass was green, the sky was blue. Heisman was making more sense than he ever made.
You're going to see heaven here.
He was our savior. He said he was our savior. He was our savior.
He started saying things like, look at the sun, the light of the sun will cleanse your mind. Look into the sun.
Look at the sun.
With their thinking all mixed up by the mind-bending drugs and under the hypnotic trance of Heisman, the boys do as they are told and begin staring directly into the sun. The drugs, combined with the blinding light, holds them in a euphoric, hypnotic trance. As a result, they are unaware of the damage the sun's ultraviolet rays are doing to their retinas.
We actually have a name for this. It's called solar retinopathy. What's happening with solar retinopathy is that ultraviolet light is striking the macula. It's causing inflammation or swelling there. And yes, you can end up with a hole in the macula. Sometimes the damage can be permanent.
And for our young men, the damage is permanent.
The pain was intense. I mean, it was like daggers in my eyes. I remember we woke up in the hospital.
At first I couldn't see much. I got a little bit of my vision back, but...
They had bandages on me for the first few weeks. And then they took the bandages off, and I couldn't see. I couldn't see a thing.
The third blinded man, Mike Campbell, declined to be interviewed. He wishes to put this event behind him. As for Rudy Heisman, he was last heard of in Toronto, Canada in 1976.
We were young, we were naive, and looking back on the whole thing, we were... I think probably stupid describes what we were back then, but three of us together, that... we're the three blind mice now.
As far as drug stories go, this was no run-of-the-mill bad trip. But is it true? Find out for sure later in the show. Let's begin with those acid-blind hippies. The story appeared in the Los Angeles Times in January 1968. It then spread all over the country, even making Time magazine. But even then, it wasn't true. LSD can't override the self-preservation instinct preventing someone to force their eyes to stay open long enough to burn out their retinas. But staring at the sun can cause permanent damage to the eye. It's most often reported when people think it's safest, during a solar eclipse. But make no mistake, staring at the sun can permanently damage your eyes, so don't try it. Fire. It's deadly dangerous, and given the right conditions, a blaze can break out in seconds. Thousands of lives are lost each year in house fires, and it lays waste to hundreds of thousands of acres of forest. Most of the time, there is a straightforward explanation for its cause. But for the residents of this tranquil village in Sicily, the reasons behind a series of fires is nothing short of a mystery. Caneto di Carogna, Sicily, 2003. One man becomes the victim of some truly bizarre blazes. Meet Nino Pezzino.
A casa.
I was at home. The first fire started at my house. Some wires caught fire.
It's a small electrical fire, easily put out.
We realized that there was this problem with the wiring, and we thought it was just us, so we called the electrician, and we got the house rewired.
The electricity is shut off while the wiring is fixed. The circuitry is dead. Nothing can work. So why then does Nino's television burst into flames? They can find no logical explanation to that question, but it's only the beginning of a strange set of occurrences. Fires begin breaking out in the village. Nino's cousin's house is gutted.
It was the mattress. Inside the mattress, all the springs had melted, but the outside of the mattress was totally fine. So these weren't normal fires.
An investigation fails to find the source of the ignition. It's decided that the electrical power to the village should be cut off.
Nothing happened for 6 days, so we were convinced that we had solved the problem. But then there was this fire on some fuse boxes, even though there was no power. We found that even without electricity, we were having the same problems.
The sight of fire extinguishers on sidewalks and street corners is common, but it's a little comfort to those who have already experienced the fiery phenomenon. Light switches, appliances, cell phones, and even water pipes catch fire. And although it's never confirmed, a young man claims his trousers caught fire. Many are skeptical, but no one is ready to rule it out. With fires breaking out without apparent source, they continue to search for clues. Some begin to suspect the nearby train line. It's determined that a buildup of electrical energy caused by grounding wires is to blame. But that is just one of many theories put forward by various experts and scientists. Meet civil engineer Francesco Venerando.
We never had any difficulty before tackling things such as earthquakes, forest fires, volcanoes, that sort of thing. But in the whole history of emergencies in Italy, this was unheard of, something we couldn't explain at all.
Everything is blamed, from naturally occurring surges of electricity to volcanic activity on Mount Etna miles away. But nothing can be proven. In desperation, villagers turn to the church.
The one thing we did do was that we asked the local priest to perform a mass for us. I never used to think it was possible for these sorts of things to exist. I'm a very skeptical person, but when they happen in front of you, things spontaneously combust in front of your eyes, you start to believe in the paranormal.
Cagneto di Carogna seems in the grips of what is referred to as spontaneous combustion. There is no such thing as a safe place, and residents are desperate for answers. But then, as suddenly as it began, it stops. There hasn't been a fire since the summer of 2005. Now, the entire village is under the watchful eye of the latest high-tech magnetic and thermal detection equipment. Experts hope that science will be able to provide the answer to this bizarre fiery phenomenon. Nino Pizzino, along with the rest of the villagers, are relieved, but on edge. For now, the cause of the fires remains a mystery. So there you have it. No ironic twist of fate, no incredible escape or survival. Just an odd story that isn't really over. Did spontaneous combustion happen in a small town in Sicily? So that leaves us with the story of the village in Sicily, where spontaneous combustion burned fuse boxes, appliances, and homes in January of 2004. The story is true. Authorities have yet to figure out what caused the fires. Nino Pizzino really does live in Cagneto di Carogna, and he thinks they haven't seen the end of it.
I believe something will happen again. I can see they're not confident. They haven't figured out what's causing these fires yet.
Strange but true. Did you believe it? Well, if you didn't, then your quest for the truth continues on the next episode of Urban Legends. It's a typical family scene poolside in Jacksonville, Florida. But there's something missing. For the Silverman family, a dark memory haunts even the sunniest of days. It was 1988. Husband and father Alan Silverman died suddenly, leaving a gaping hole in the family, changing Christmas forever. They had recently moved to sunny Florida from Pittsburgh. Reflecting on life then, the surviving family members, Mom Bonnie, daughter Alice, and son Aaron, fondly recall a picture-perfect family. Life was good in their new dream home.
We moved to this fabulous neighborhood in an absolutely beautiful house, elegant.
It was huge, spacious rooms, beautiful yard, acres of land.
Just beautiful, everything the way that it was set up. We were almost too afraid to sit down on all the furniture.
Better still, the couple living next door instantly became the Silvermans' new best friends. Meet Terry Hotchkiss.
We tried to make them feel at home in the neighborhood the day they moved in. My wife Ronnie went over with a tray of cookies, and from that time on, the four of us were really tight.
When Christmas rolled around, Alan and Terry pulled out all the stops. The Silvermans' new house had a fireplace with a substantial chimney. That gave the two men an idea for an innocent Christmas prank that would surprise Bonnie and the kids.
Alan and I hatched this plan that we would make it a special event. He wanted to become Santa Claus. And he would actually make a grand entrance into his living room through the chimney, complete with a bag full of presents for the kids.
Loaded with gifts and dressed like Santa, Alan would climb onto the roof and down into the chimney. Alan practiced the prank a few times until he was confident it would work. He was excited about seeing the joy on the kids' faces. As Christmas Eve approached, he needed an alibi to get him out of the house.
He told me and the children that there was an emergency in Pittsburgh. There was an systems analysis problem that had to be done absolutely before New Year's.
He basically said goodbye to his wife, drove away, came back, hung out in the garage until after dark.
When the coast was clear, Alan climbed on the roof. All was going according to plan. But about halfway down the chimney, he became stuck. Foolishly, he hadn't done a proper test run, fully loaded with the heavily padded Santa suit and sack full of presents. If he called for help, the chimney walls muffled his cries because no one heard him. Back inside the house, Bonnie Silverman was worried and confused. Alan had not called from the road as he said he would. By the day after Christmas, she still hadn't heard from him.
Perhaps he was having an affair. There were so many smart girls that had graduated and gone into business. I thought, I'd let myself go perhaps. I mean, I had 2 little kids. The things that went through my mind, I can't tell you what I thought.
Like a good neighbor, Terry dropped by to check on them.
Bonnie, hi.
Hi.
Hey, kids.
Say hi to Terry, kids.
Where's Ellen?
He's been called away on business.
And you haven't seen him since Christmas Day?
Pang in the bottom of my gut, and I went outside. And then climbed up the ladder onto the roof.
Terry was about to make a gruesome discovery.
There he was, dead. His eyes were all glazed over.
Alan Silverman had died of a heart attack, dressed as Santa, with a sack load of presents for his family, wedged in his own chimney. The Silverman family was shattered forever. The sunny dream home became a casket. Bonnie and her 2 small children couldn't bear to live there. She sold it and moved out.
I simply couldn't live in that house with the memories of the police pulling him out of the chimney, black and sooty, and I couldn't live with that.
It's a tragic tale, where the day-to-day meanderings of life take a sad, dark, ironic twist. Alan Silverman's poorly planned prank got the better of him. Or did it? Was it Alan Silverman, whose good intentions of playing Santa ended sadly when he got stuck in his own chimney? False. This is a classic urban legend that is almost as old as Santa himself. The tale even made it to the silver screen in a 1984 hit movie, Gremlins. Surrey, England, September 2002. Life for some people in this leafy, serene county is about to take an unusual, fateful twist. Meet well-respected couple about town, Helena and Rory DeVoe.
I'd been preparing all day a dinner party. My husband, Rory, he'd invited his boss.
Well, Helena had got it into her head that it would be a good idea to invite George along, as it may help my promotional prospects within the company.
The caterers descend on Helena's kitchen with all the raw ingredients needed to prepare a gourmet meal.
They would come to your house and prepare it there, rather than just turn up pre-cooked and heat the stuff up.
It seemed like an excellent idea, really. I'd get the caterers in, and the menu looked actually quite appetizing.
Meanwhile, Rory busies himself with some do-it-yourself car maintenance. It turns out to be really poor judgment and bad timing. He is about to mix something in the kitchen blender that is a pure recipe for disaster. A special concoction of coolant for his car's radiator.
See, the trouble is you can't just pour them into the tank together, because one sort of lays on top of the other, a bit like oil and water. So you have to, basically it's all in the blending.
Helena DeVoe, not impressed with her husband's timing, kicks him out of the crowded kitchen. But she's made a terrible mistake. She's left a liquid time bomb on the counter. Food preparation continues, and when Helena returns from getting her hair done for the occasion, no one notices the family cat helping itself to one of the specially prepared dishes, the salmon mousse. Helena quickly puts the cat outside, but it's too late. It has already eaten a portion of the dish. Determined not to let spoiled mousse spoil the evening, she simply smooths off the bite marks and puts the mousse back on the menu. And as the guests sit down to dinner, no one suspects anything's wrong.
Oh, well, the meal was going along swimmingly.
Very well, actually.
At the same time the guests are tucking into dessert, the housekeeper makes a gruesome discovery on the lawn. The family cat is dead.
Well, my first thought was, oh my God, it's the salmon mousse.
And then that's when the penny dropped. The mixer.
The remote possibility that the remains of the antifreeze made its way into the salmon mousse via the blender became a distinct possibility. Even small quantities of the liquid can be lethal. Meet toxicologist Dr. Miria Glass.
Antifreeze contains ethylene glycol, which when metabolized by the liver produces toxic products such as aldehydes and glycolates. When these toxins accumulate, the liver shuts down, which can lead to multi-organ failure. Heart failure, respiratory failure, kidney failure is fatal to humans.
The DeVoes have no choice but to tell their guests they've just been poisoned by the lethal salmon mousse. An embarrassing acknowledgement quickly turns into a medical emergency, and the next destination is the closest possible hospital. Each guest undergoes a gastric lavage. Their stomachs are pumped to rid themselves of the poison. Meanwhile, in the hospital lab, the salmon mousse is tested, but no trace of poisonous antifreeze is found. A medical mystery unfolds. If the salmon mousse didn't kill the cat, what did? The awful truth soon comes out.
After we'd returned from the hospital, one of our neighbours came and said that it wasn't the salmon mousse at all.
Their neighbor had laid out rat poison in their garage, and she saw the cat staggering out of there that afternoon. The mystery moose puzzle is solved. Crisis averted. No one has been poisoned, but Rory is angry with his neighbor.
The thing that really annoyed me was she didn't want to come in and tell us straight away because she could see we were having so much fun and thought she'd leave it till later.
Helena blames the unfortunate series of events for Rory's stall on climbing the corporate ladder.
To this day, I swear it was the whole stomach pumping incident that cost Rory a promotion.
Absolutely.
So, could this have happened? Could a strange set of circumstances come together at the right moment to create a medical emergency? Is it true? It's time to come clean on which one of the three legendary tales is true. Was the story of the antifreeze, the dead cat, the supposedly poisoned salmon mousse, and the stomach pump dinner guests true? Well, no. The story of the poisoned pet has been around since the 1940s, and it simply refuses to lie down. Sometimes it's a dog that dies, sometimes it's a cat. Sometimes it's mushrooms that the unfortunate hostess cooks for dinner. Sometimes it's salmon mousse. But no matter how this fishy tale is served up, it's just not true. London, England, 1977. A landmark year. Punk rock explodes. The Queen celebrates 25 years on the throne. And a young girl is about to witness an urban legend in the making. Meet Tammy Jones today as she recounts the story from her childhood.
Oh, he was my pride and joy. He was everything to me. When I used to come home from school, the first thing I wanted to do was play with Gareth.
The love of Tammy's life, a ginger tomcat. Meet Gareth.
He was just so cuddly and loving, and he was just adorable.
But not to everyone. Meet Tammy's former neighbor, Edith Paris.
Yes, I remember Gareth always going into people's gardens and weeing everywhere. And then he got bold, started going in their houses.
Gareth the cat finds his way into Edith Paris's house, much to her disapproval. She wants the cat out.
Rushing around the room after him, and he was scampering around, and I was hitting him with a newspaper, and he leapt out the front window.
Chastised and beaten by Mrs. Paris, the frightened feline Gareth seeks refuge and makes his escape to the front yard.
Gareth would always come in for his morning feed by usually 1 o'clock the latest, and he hadn't turned up that day, and that was just really unusual. That was not like him at all.
The worried young Tammy begins to search for her beloved pet, and it isn't long before she finds him. For Tammy, who fears for the life of her furry friend, it's a nightmare.
That's when I ran back to Mum and said, Mum, Gareth stuck up the tree.
Help is needed to rescue the cat. Meet firefighter Alan Tyne, 30-year veteran, but back then, a new recruit.
Got a call. Pretty much like today, normal day, been a bit slack. Cat stuck up a tree.
So the next thing that happened was a big red fire engine turned up, a big burly fireman in it. It was quite thrilling, really.
Arrived at the scene, and they tried everything, you know, cooling it, food, all sorts of stuff.
It all seems routine, all in a day's work, but Alan is in for a nasty shock.
Got the ladder up to the bow, cat's on the end of the bow. I went straight up the ladder. This is going to be easy.
and the cat was scratching him, really going for him.
Cat? It should have been left up there, vicious.
And he was covered in blood. Poor thing, he was in such a mess.
It went from my face, it was in my hair. A lot of people were standing around. I was going to get the mickey taken out of me anyway, being the youngest, so I kept going.
Alan's pride is at stake. He can't fail. And after a 30-minute fight, the situation is under control. A heroic Alan wins the respect of his colleagues, and he safely returns Gareth to his young owner, who isn't exactly grateful.
Give Gareth to me or hurt him.
There you go.
Gave the cat to Tammy. But was she grateful? No.
I've come out of some fires with some bruises, but I was scarred for months. I'd rather go to a fire than a cat.
Job done. The cat is safe. The story should end there, but in true urban legend style, it goes on. Several fateful moments too long.
Don't worry, Gareth, that nasty man will leave you alone now.
Felt a bit of a bump.
The fire engine hit him.
He ran right over the cat.
One minute I was up in arms with joy, the next minute I was absolutely in tears, I remember.
Absolutely tragic. I think they were the very words I used at the time.
Well, I had quite a few cats after that. None of them were like Gareth. He was my special little baby. You know, he was my first pet and always will be.
So, did you believe the tragic tale of cuddly loving Gareth the cat? Run over by the very people sent to rescue him? Did it happen? What about the story of the cat up a tree, then run over by the rescuer's vehicle? Cats are accidentally killed on roads every day, but not Gareth. This story is false. And he certainly didn't die at the hands of the fire crew who had just saved him. The story has been around since the 60s in various places in the United States. It even surfaced in England in the late 70s, but there has never been a confirmation of it actually happening. Stuttgart, Germany, 1997. U.S. Army base Theodore Roosevelt. Private Jonathan Overton of the 317th Supply Battalion was a new recruit. At the age of 18, little Johnny joined the military, hoping tough Army discipline would give him the spine he seemed to lack. But military training was a lot tougher than he thought. So tough, it drove Johnny to try to take his own life. In the Army, those not meeting the top physical and mental standards are dealt with harshly, with the aim of building muscle and character. That job is up to tough disciplinarians who make it their mission to turn even the weakest of boys into combat-ready soldiers.
You know, everybody gets a lot of guff when you're at the bottom of the ladder. Everybody expects that, but he just had it in for me from day one, to be honest.
In Johnny's battalion, the toughest taskmaster was the notorious Sergeant Glenn Harris.
You're the worst soldier in this army. We could never go to war with somebody like you. You couldn't defend an anthill.
You know, I didn't enjoy being picked on, so, you know, I was doing my damnedest to, avoid, setting them off.
Not so fast, Overton. Overton, give me that mop. I've got something better for you. Get in there.
From the beginning, Sergeant Harris made life tough for Johnny, thinking nothing of making him clean the filthy latrines with a toothbrush. Having humiliated the recruit, Sergeant Harris next aimed to break Johnny's body and his spirit. Meet Big Bertha, a 100-pound floor polisher that was Sergeant Harris's special surprise for the Wimps. It took all of Johnny's strength just to hang on to it.
It was whoom, 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 arms feel like they're going to rip out of their sockets.
After buffing the same section of hallway for over 6 hours, Private Overton was more exhausted than he'd ever been in his life. He could scarcely hear at all because of Big Bertha's relentless roar. Johnny was at the breaking point, and Sergeant Harris was about to push him one step further.
Overton? I think you missed a bit.
He just dumped dirty water over the whole thing, just told me to clean it all up again, you know, and that was it. Something snapped inside me, I guess. I don't know. The only way out, I thought, was to kill myself. I was up on the 5th floor of that building, and I thought what I'd do is I'll take that floor polisher, which is the last thing I've been working with, you know, and I'd chuck it out of the window with the cord tied around my neck. I hoped it would either choke me or rip my head off or something.
Making Private Overton's life miserable was all in a day's work for Sergeant Harris. As he prepared to leave for the day, he was unaware of Johnny's fragile mental state.
I just sort of heaved it up on the windowsill there, and I pushed it out the window.
The 100-pound polisher dropped like a boulder from the 5th floor window, the cord quickly unwinding behind it. As the buffer fell, it gained speed, enough to instantly snap a human neck once the cord went tight. If the cord went tight. Private Overton was still alive. The sergeant's truck was underneath that same window, thereby shortening the distance the polisher had to fall by 5 feet. It was just enough to spare Johnny's life. Not only did he survive, but Johnny accidentally got some revenge at the same time. Sergeant Harris, now crippled for life. After a court-martial, Overton was sentenced to 3 months for assault on a superior officer and reckless personal endangerment. True story or false? We'll let you know at the end of the show. First, was it tortured soul Jonathan Overton who botched his suicide bid and wrecked more than a truck in the process? The story is false. This is a classic urban legend, told with slight variations throughout the years, and always cited to a different army base. Among the list, Fort Benning, Fort Leonard Wood, Fort Jackson, Fort Knox, and Fort Gordon. But it couldn't have happened at all of them, and in fact, it didn't happen at any of them. August 1990. 29 Palms Marine Corps Base, California's Mojave Desert. The 2nd Battalion 7th Marines are awaiting deployment to Saudi Arabia. The heat, isolation, and boredom make day-to-day life stressful for the soldiers. Meet Lance Corporal Calvin Morales.
The Mojave sucked. It was hot, arid. I mean, we were just sitting around, confined to barracks. It was hell.
Meet Corporal Dean Highland.
You know, like you're just on the edge of your seat every day, just waiting and ship out. But, you know, there's just no action like day in and day out, so you kind of go crazy at some point.
One man who seems to take the pressure in stride is someone the other soldiers look up to. Lance Corporal Peter Campbell.
Well, Pete Campbell, he's a Marine's Marine. You know, he's the type of guy, like, when we're down in the trenches, you want him by your side.
All I know is when I served with him, I mean, he was all right. He was hardcore.
He always had his head about him. You know, nothing fazed the guy.
Peter Campbell always seems cool, even in the heat of the desert. But beneath the calm exterior, a secret is simmering, and his tipping point is the delivery of the mail. The soldiers look forward to mail from home. Letters from loved ones and care packages keep them grounded and focused.
Pete got 2 boxes. The first one I think had like cookies and a videotape.
He got a movie in one. I mean, we were bored that day. We figured, let's toss in the tape.
But no sooner does the action film begin when it's interrupted by what appears to be an amateur adult video.
Halfway through the movie, sort of a homemade porno came up.
There was some really gnarly-looking chick with this mask on, and some dude.
The tape featuring the masked woman continues to play. Pete opens the last little surprise from his wife. Inside the envelope, he finds something vaguely familiar. It's the same mask the woman in the film is wearing. And for Pete, the reality is about to hit him right between the eyes.
All of a sudden, the chick in the porno movie removes the mask, looks into the camera.
See, I told you I wanted to divorce Pete.
The woman on screen is Pete's wife. Mrs. Campbell delivers the news to Pete in a cruel and devious way. At that point, the Iceman melts. His temper, unchecked, erupts with a fury that none of his buddies has ever seen before. But his wife has.
Well, the rumors were that when he went back home on leave, he would slap his lady around and take his aggression out on her.
That's the actions of a coward.
Pete's abused wife exposes him for what he is, and at the same time gets her revenge. So did Pete's secret really get exposed like this? Did his wife really send the divorce message in the mail? First, let's settle our last story once and for all and expose it for what it really is. Did a care package from home turn out to be bad news for a soldier? No. The Dear John video tale has been reported since the mid-'80s. Sending soldiers messages on home video was popular during the First Gulf War, so the legend continues to be rewound and played again and again. Like all good urban myths, it exists in multiple variation, each one just as untrue. The recipient of the video has been identified as a Marine, a basic soldier, a sailor, and a pilot. What happens on tape also varies, and sometimes you even find out what kind of cookies were sent with the tape. But it's still not true. We're all familiar with supermarket giveaways and promotions. Buy this and get that. Buy more, get more. But are you really getting a deal? In the spring of 1999, the health-conscious packaged food company in this story comes up with a brilliant plan to sell lots of their product in a unique way. Meet Tim McMahon, company spokesperson.
We've done some promotions before with giveaways. This is a slightly different giveaway in that you're giving away flight miles, which no one had done before.
Their plan? Give away 50 air miles for every item purchased. Just send in the barcodes and a label as proof. The company offers to double the air miles if they are sent in by a certain date.
Well, 500 flight miles is pretty good for most people. If you did a couple of 3 or 4 of those, you could take your family on a nice vacation. So we ran the numbers, and he said somebody would really literally have to buy 4,000 or 5,000 items. No one's going to bust the bank on this. What's the worst that could happen?
Well, that would be David Phillips. David discovers the promotion while shopping.
I happened to be doing the grocery shopping one night, and I saw an airline on a frozen chicken dinner, some kind of promotion, and it said, buy any Healthy Choice products and earn 100 frequent flyer miles. So I started thinking about it, and the dinner was about $3, and I said, you know, that's a pretty good deal.
$3 for 100 air miles sounds okay, but a trip to Europe is 40,000 air miles. David would need to buy 400 of them, costing him $1,200. Not a great deal. But David is hooked, so he begins cruising the grocery store aisles until he hits the big time.
I came to this one store and there was a display case that had individual cups of chocolate pudding for sale, and they were 25 cents each, and each one had its own barcode. I started doing a little calculation and I figured, well, I can get to Europe for like $70 worth of pudding.
It's a deal too good to pass up.
And I, double-checked my math, and I just thought, wow, this is incredible. I mean, I was really excited when I found that chocolate pudding. And I just, grabbed the whole display case. It's a little embarrassing, but I actually was my heart was beating pretty hard when I saw that chocolate pudding.
David then hatches a plan to buy up as much pudding as he can.
I tracked down all of the other stores that were selling this pudding, and within no time I'd basically cleaned off all the shelves of pudding within the area.
Yeah, hi. I'm looking for some double chocolate fudge pudding.
This all happened in 1999. At that point, I really didn't want to give up the secret of the pudding, so I'd just kind of look them in the eye and I'd say, Y2K. In total, I bought a little over 12,000 cups of chocolate pudding, so I spent about $3,000 on pudding.
David is all but ready to pack his bags for Europe. He has enough pudding for 30 trips, as long as he peels off 12,000 barcodes.
I realized there really was no way for me to get all of these peeled off in time to meet the deadline. The second problem I had was, what was I going to do with 12,000 cups of pudding? But I got the idea that maybe I could donate all the chocolate pudding to a food bank or something. Maybe they could help me peel off the labels. So I did some calling, and I finally found a good-natured guy at the Salvation Army.
Hi, David.
Hi.
How are you?
All right.
It's the salvation David needs. He soon has enough barcodes to equal 1.2 million travel miles. All he has to do to collect is send them in.
The promotion said wait 6 to 8 weeks, and I waited 8 weeks, and then I contacted the company and said, look, I haven't heard from you, what's going on? They said, we've got no record that you submitted the barcodes to us.
David's multi-million-mile claim has overwhelmed the company. The package has passed from one department to another until it's eventually lost. But thanks to David's relentless efforts and his meticulous record-keeping, the mistake is realized, and David is triumphant.
They sent me a box that was about this big, just stacked full of 500-mile certificates. I ended up with 1,250,000 frequent flyer miles.
Blunder is an understatement.
So that's the story of one company's marketing blunder and the pudding guy who could fly free for the rest of his life. Did you believe it? So that leaves the pudding man. He collected over 1 million air miles from just $3,000 worth of pudding. You may have seen it as a plot in the Adam Sandler movie Punch Drunk Love, and it's totally true. David Phillips really is the pudding man who turned 12,150 lids into several European vacations.
I've always had my eye for good deals, and when I get intrigued by something, I tend to really go for it. This was by far the biggest, grandest thing I've ever done.
He broke the bank.
Did you guess David's story was true? If not, keep clipping those coupons and stay on the lookout for the truth on the next episode of Urban Legends. Cannes, France. This picturesque resort city of 68,000 people on the French Riviera is known for its beaches, sun, and the annual film festival. And the man in this death-defying story could star in his own real-life horror movie. Meet Cannes resident and motorcycle enthusiast, 56-year-old André Messager. His harrowing tale begins in a torrential downpour in the early morning hours of September 9, 2005. Driving rain had reduced visibility to zero, and the streets were turned into rivers. Andre had just delivered his motorbike to a repair shop and was running through the streets to return home. He didn't realize the raging torrents had lifted a storm drain cover directly in front of him. Andre is plunged deep under the scenic streets of Cannes, falling 8 feet into the raging and churning currents of the underground sewer pipes. He is injured, stunned, and horrified to find himself in this predicament.
Alors là, j'ai réalisé qu'il n'y avait rien à faire. I had fallen down into this torrent. It was like a washing machine. I realized there was nothing I could do. I had torn my arm and whacked my head. I'd fallen down, legs everywhere, ripped my hand to pieces.
He fights to hold on, but the slippery surfaces provide absolutely no grip. But he realizes he's holding on to something. It's his helmet. Without thinking, he jams it on his head and readies himself for what's to come.
So I crossed my arms over my chest, like this. I remember it was like a really quick toboggan in the pitch black.
He is tossed from side to side like a rag doll, along with debris, sludge, and human waste.
At one point, I was literally like a ping pong ball. I hit something like a bit of concrete, my shoulder hit it, and there was a massive crack. I felt my shoulder pop out, and then it popped back in again.
The strong current sweeps him along. His head is bashed against the walls, but his helmet protects him.
The only thing I could think of was swimming and getting hold of something, so I swam like a crazy man, even though my shoulder was completely ruined.
But luckily for Andre, someone has seen him disappear down the hole. Meet Loelia Pissot.
I was there early that morning. I saw a man run up and fall into the sewer. It was just unreal. I couldn't believe it. I thought, we won't see him again.
Loelia calls for help. The fire department is the first to arrive. Meet firefighter Frédéric Patoret.
We saw the spot where he had fallen, and we realized very quickly, because there was a very strong current, that there was no way we could go in to see what had happened. It was far too dangerous. At first we tried to follow the sewers on the surface to see if we could see where he might emerge further on down. But then we couldn't do that anymore because it was all underground.
Andre has been in the sewer for only 5 minutes, but he's traveled almost a mile and a half. What he doesn't know is that he's quickly heading to his final destination, the open sea. Mustering his strength and his wits, he grabs hold of a ledge, just in the nick of time.
I called for help, and I saw this face. She looked down, and she nearly fainted of shock as she said, "What are you doing down there?" And I said, "I've fallen in the sewers. Go and get the fire department."
Andre is found, but he's still trapped below ground. But rescue crews can't get to Andre at the point where he's been discovered. They have to look further away.
About 200 meters away, there was a much larger opening where we could access the tunnel he had been in.
When I saw the rescue team and the light, I said, finally, that's it. It's over. The nightmare is over.
C'est fini le cauchemar. But Andre has to hang on for 2 more hours before firemen can finally free him. Injured and soaking, but happy to be alive. His helmet turns out to be a lifesaver. But was this sewer slide story true? So that leaves Andre Messager, the man who fell into a sewer during a raging storm, traveled almost 2 miles, but managed to stop before being swept out to sea. It's totally true.
This is the drain where the lady found me eventually, 2.5 meters underneath this little grill.
I think Monsieur Messager is really very lucky. He had the presence of mind to put on his helmet, plus he was very fit. Not everyone could have survived a situation like that.
One wrong step turns out to be an amazing story of survival and luck. And it's all true. Were you able to guess correctly? Well, if you promise to watch where you're walking, you can join us again for another episode of Urban Legends.